Hello, my name is Fred Cox. I'm running for the Salt Lake County uh, Council District 2. I'm going to repeat that. My name is Fred Cox. I'm running for Salt Lake County Council District 2. That incorporates areas of West Valley, Kearns, Magna, uh, west part of West Jordan, South Jordan, a good part of South Jordan, some of Riverton and Harriman, and also Copperton. I want you to know that I appreciate the those that are coming and listening now, or that will watch this later. We have found that a number of people come back and watch later. I have received various questions over the last couple of weeks. One of the things that I want to make mention, those of you that are Salt Lake County Republican delegates, the party is doing a trial today. You should have received an email from them stating how you can try out the software that they plan on using next week for the voting. If you have not received a email from them, please go to the Salt Lake County Republican website. Let them know that you're not getting the emails. I have contacted a number of you. I've even turned in a number of emails to the county party so that you would be able to get that information not only today to try it out, but next week so you'll be able to vote. So if you're not getting the emails from the Salt Lake County Republican Party and you are a 2018 or 2020 delegate, contact them. I just want to make that very clear. It's very important. I wanted to also tell you a little bit about me and then open it up to questions. Hopefully, I'll be able to see questions as they come in. I have access to email. Also, this format allows you to make comments off the side, which I will see. Some of the other methods that you can ask me questions I may not see till later. If that's the case, I will answer them on my blog, which I've done before. My website is Fred Cox, the number 4, Utah.com. It's not a fancy website. I've just put it there for information. Haven't paid somebody a lot of money to do it. In fact, I did it myself, and it probably shows. So I wanted you to be aware of that. There is a link to a blog spot, a blog that I've had for over 10 years, and you're certainly welcome to take a look at anything that I've said over the years. If you don't agree with it, ask me and see if I still agree with it or not. I kid people that sometimes I don't agree with myself, but I should be able to explain or respond to anything that's there. I've made some more recent posts having to do with this specific election, other things that I've been involved with, and you should be able to look at that there. I will post a copy of this video there in both Facebook format and also YouTube format, so those that are not on Facebook should be able to watch this later. Next week, I've given the county party a couple of videos that were just shot outside, 4 minutes and 2 minutes. You should be able to see the 4-minute one if you're a county delegate. The 2-minute one is if we have a second round of voting, which is very possible when you have 3 strong Republican candidates, and we have an impressive 4th candidate that's a Democrat that will be facing this fall. So that's some information about that. As far as me, I was born in Salt Lake City. I grew up in Salt Lake City. Over 30 years ago, I moved to West Valley City, which is where I still am. I enjoy living here primarily because of the people. We have great people that live in this area. And over the course of many decades, I have met people from all over the county. And a couple of things that you should know about me is when I was 15, I set a goal to be an architect by the time I was 30. I met that goal by several months. That was something that I had set when I was 15, and before I was 30, I had achieved. So I am an architect. That could be good or bad depending on who you ask. That means that an architect, if he's a smart architect, and hopefully I am, knows a little bit about a lot of things, a lot about a very few things, and hopefully knows how to listen to people that know a lot of things. I hire engineers. I work with subcontractors and other contractors that know a lot more than I do in certain areas. So if I have a question about locks, I know who I can go ask questions about locks because they know about locks and I know a little bit about locks. That's the way that I have operated. And when I was in the legislature, in the end of 2010, I found out that my state representative was stepping down to be the state budget director at the request of the governor. Right before he was to take office, he was asked, and so within a day or two after January 1st of 2011, he stepped down and I took over that position. I ran, it was the county delegates that made the decision on who to replace Ron Bigelow. And I won by one vote in the second round. So I served in the legislature 2011, 12, also 2015, 2016, and I've been heavily involved in a number of other campaigns and races. In 1994, 1996, can't remember the year right now, Ron had asked me to deliver flyers to help his campaign, and so I did that, and I started helping campaigns. In 2002, I showed up to a neighborhood caucus meeting because I wanted to make sure that we had better people on the ballot. That's why I went. I was selected to be a state delegate. There was not a big turnout to that caucus meeting that year, and I started doing that every year. 2 years later, I wasn't elected, but that person moved, and so I was selected again. And I've been involved in the caucus convention system. One of the reasons that I believe it's so important is it allows somebody. In the end of 2010, 2011, I had a budget of $60. That's all the resources I had at the time, and that was ink and paper and gas. And I knocked on doors. Right now, I can't knock on a bunch of doors because of the current situation that we're in. But that allowed me to win against somebody that was well liked and famous, at least in my area, with one of those names that everybody recognizes. Great individual, and but I was able to compete because of the caucus convention system. That's the reason that I believe that it is very important. I have been a very strong opponent of this particular system. It's something that I believe that it helps individuals that are not famous, not incumbent, or not rich to be able to compete and to run, and to allow individuals that are incumbents to lose. I certainly have had the opportunity on both sides of that. The other thing you should know about me is that I was a strong supporter of not moving the prison from Draper. Not that it's necessarily the best place, but there was enough acreage there that I knew that they could reconstruct the buildings that needed to be reconstructed, free up a lot of land there that could be a tax basis for Draper, and save taxpayers hundreds and perhaps hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. I took a lot of political heat because of that. There are many people that wonder that that's why I didn't win in 2016 because of that. But that wasn't why I made that decision. I made that decision because, one, as an architect, I'd worked on drawings for prisons and jails. I had been a volunteer with my wife at the Draper prison for a couple of years. And so I knew the facility. I knew more than what they were showing us as far as legislators. And I knew that we could save hundreds of millions of dollars. And so I stepped in front of that train. In that case, it didn't stop, but in many cases it does. Another thing that I was involved in recently, at the end of 2019, the legislature passed a tax change. It was a reform of our current tax structure. I had attended the public meetings that summer or fall, and had seen that legislators were making a list of things that they had to deal with if they passed it, but they didn't listen to the public, which basically said, don't do this. They could see a problem. The public could see a problem with their solution. The legislators still did that. And when I watched on my phone in the end of December, and I watched it pass by 2/3, there was 20 votes for it in the Senate, and I thought, well, they've got enough to block a referendum. And then it went to the House. They did not have enough votes for a 2/3 vote. And that's important for two reasons. One, if you have a 2/3 vote, there's no referendum per our state constitution. They didn't get it. Also, if there's a 2/3 vote, it can have an immediate effective date as soon as the governor signs it. And in this case, they didn't have the 2/3, which meant it was going to be 60 days before this bill took effect, leaving enough time for a referendum. It went back to the Senate. One of the senators had left, and so they got 19 votes instead of 20. And I started making phone calls. I called some of my most liberal and conservative friends. No one liked what passed. There were 5 items that people didn't like. It had to do with raising food tax. I had fought that since 2011. It had to do with raising fuel tax. It had to do with taking $680 million out of the education fund and not saying how they were going to solve that. It was restructuring the way that we fund roads. We fund roads primarily 2 ways based on our state constitution, and that's a fuel tax and also transportation-related taxes, including transportation-related sales tax. About $600 million goes to roads from that, and they were changing that, and I believe that to be unconstitutional. And the final thing was a number of new services would be taxed. And in many cases, if you start taxing certain services, those services cease to exist. People go somewhere else. They go to Delta instead of a local travel agent, whatever. In this case, it didn't include the travel agencies this time, but did include others that would be affected. Even if it was just dating services, that was going to be taxed. You tell me someone's going to pay sales tax on that if they could go to some national company or whatever. So there were problems with that bill, and we assembled. I had just a few days to get 5 sponsors together. Obviously, I had me. We found another 4 people that signed it. I printed out that over 200-page bill on my printer, took it in with a couple other people Monday morning, and we submitted it to the Lieutenant Governor's office. And then by the time that we had an approved packet, we had lined up volunteers, and we had hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers. We got 170,000 signatures statewide in all counties. We met the requirements in all but 2 or 3 counties. Actually, 2 counties we were within a packet. 1 county we met the requirement, but because of the decision of the Lieutenant Governor's office, that county did not finish counting. Salt Lake County only counted enough so that we would meet the requirements. We still had another 40,000 signatures at Salt Lake County Clerk's office. So we were successful for 2 reasons. One, we used volunteers, and we asked them to work together, even though many of them were liberal and conservatives from all backgrounds, and they were willing to do that. Not everybody will agree with me on all issues, but these individuals agreed on this particular issue. One of those 5 items was critical because the legislature put enough in that bill. They thought that there would be something that everybody would like, but what they did was create a bill that there was something in there that everybody hated. So we just needed to provide an opportunity for people to find the packets. In that case, Harmon's helped dramatically, Associated Stores, other places. We were wearing out the libraries up until that point, but we were still getting signatures. So I wanted to mention that. There was a referendum, still possibly is a referendum for Olympia Hills. And let me explain why I oppose that development as proposed. And the reason why is, I'm an architect. I have worked on mixed-use projects. I currently have working on a high-density mixed-use project for approximately 3 acres. This was 900 acres. the Olympia Hills project, and I went to one of the town hall meetings that they had out in Harriman and listened to the public. They were not saying don't build at all or we don't want any development. They said this is too much, too fast, and it was the details. The master plan was concerning, but to rezone over 900 acres all at once and to create a development agreement that some future city would inherit, that would rule basically no matter what anybody did at the county or the city, as far as changing zoning ordinances or anything else. That development agreement takes precedence. So I appreciate that information. And I certainly did my best. I met with the planners of that referendum, gave them my best advice, tried to be as helpful as possible, and they were well underway when things changed as far as the situation, and then the governor changed the rules and then changed them again. And the second change basically put the brakes on everything for now, and I have complained to the governor's office, and hopefully maybe there's still something that can be done there. I want you to know that I believe that it is very important that we elect somebody in this particular position that is willing to listen, to have public town hall meetings when they are available to be public. If you look at the number of public town hall meetings I had in the legislature, I would literally have a dozen or more every year, not just 2 or 3 during the session. And I invited everybody. Any act is, as my resources were there, I literally invited anybody that voted, and sent that out publicly so that people could come. So I didn't just get Republican delegates that came to the town hall meetings. I had liberal Democrats, libertarians, you name it, come. And I tried to turn most of the meeting over for questions. And so I'm looking for questions now. But that's very important, particularly this particular district. And hopefully with redistricting, it'll make more sense. I was involved in redistricting in 2011. I wasn't on the final committee, but I certainly was. I was in the legislature, and I proposed a congressional district map that was co-sponsored by Ben McAdams. I was the only legislator that had a bipartisan congressional district map, and my hat and 3 stripes avoided crossing any boundaries as much as possible and still meet the requirements. It was the favored map. 15 out of 17 members of that redistricting committee liked my map. They felt like it was a good map, accomplishing good goals. And then the parties, in my particular case, it was my own party that threatened to sue the state if it was adopted. And so the map was tossed, and we have what we have. But I believe that Salt Lake County's 6 districts need to be looked at to try to keep cities and neighborhoods together as much as possible. We'll see what ends up coming. In this case, the county has individuals that will help draw that. I want you to know that listening is very important. I also, when I was in the legislature, I had a reputation of reading bills before I had to vote on them. So between midnight and 2 in the morning, what was I doing? I was reading through bills. I was printing out lists of bills that I was going to have to vote on, because in the legislature every year, I had to vote on perhaps 600 bills. And I would make a list of everything that I'd have to be voting on. Even up into the last couple of days, I was printing out lists so that I would be able to read through as much as possible and make decisions on whether it was a good bill or not. And so I had a good reputation of that. I had a reputation of showing up to meetings. My attendance record was one of the best in the legislature. In 2015, I missed 12 votes because they had a committee meeting during floor time, which is very unusual. And so I missed the votes at that point. That was the only votes that I missed that entire session. So I was there because I wanted to hear what Representative King, he was a Democrat, but he would oftentimes speak on bills, and I would listen, and he had some valid points. Maybe I could figure out a win-win, and maybe the bill wasn't ready for prime time, or maybe it was. but I would listen to various views, and I was not afraid to stand up and make a motion to amend. On the Olympia Hills project, I proposed a compromise to all 9 members of the county council. I got responses back from 3. Those 3 didn't vote for the proposal that passed, but I had a compromise that I thought would fix it so the developer wasn't thrown underneath the bus, and neither was the local residents or cities. That wasn't what happened. So we'll see what happens. If you're looking for somebody to be a rubber stamp, I'm not it. I do have a tendency to be conservative. I do believe that we need to speak up or government takes over our lives. I said that in 2010, 2011. That's still very true today. I believe there's ways that we can fight this virus without the government taking over our lives, and I believe that we need to start looking at that as soon as possible, because we have people that are getting sick. I know some of the people that have gotten sick. Luckily, I didn't talk to them when they were sick, but or at least in person. But they seem to be getting better. But people have died. The virus is very serious, but we have Constitution, U.S. and state Constitution. We have rights, and there's ways to solve this without taking away our rights, and I will fight for that. I will fight to get the economy up and running. I'm hoping by next January, when I would be able to take office if I were to win, that things will be back to normal. But I remember what it was like the last time we had a huge downturn, 2008, 2009, 10. As a self-employed architect, I remember walking into a store with $3 in my wallet, trying to decide whether to buy a can of chicken that I could make chicken noodle soup for a week, or to get milk for cereal. And the tax on the can of chicken was enough that I got the milk. That's one of the reasons I fought that tax bill so hard, is we literally had people contributing to print these packets that we had to have. We needed to raise, ultimately we raised around $36,000. About 30,000 of that was all small donations. We had 1 or 2 people that donated larger amounts, but most of these were $5, $10, $15, $20, $25, maybe $50. Many of them right before Christmas, and people basically wrote that they were giving up their Christmas so they could eat this year. It's important that that referendum was successful and the legislature caved, because there would be people buying food right now with a higher tax rate and would be having struggles to do that. So that's a couple of things about me. Somebody mentioned, as a small business owner in construction, I'm glad you stood up for us. That tax bill, I did stand up, and the previous year that was going to be on services, I stood up to, because it would have devastated various construction and other industries. It's important that people listen. Let me go back to a couple of questions that I have been asked in the past, and I want you to realize that I'm not afraid to answer questions. But what do you think some of the biggest issues facing Salt Lake County currently? And my response was growth, taxes, transportation, water, air, and crime. And I would add right now the economy. Obviously, health is very important. We don't want people to die. But our economy is not designed for this type of format. So that is very important. Other things that I've been asked is, continue to support efforts to repeal the law allowing signatures for individuals to get on the ballot. I have opposed SB 54 before it was created, during its creation, and after its creation, and have proposed, sponsored a bill that would have blocked its implementation. So yeah, I'm currently in that category. Support local cities. I want to mention that. Hopefully I didn't mess up this video. Before this current shutdown, I I was focused on the referendum. I wasn't planning on running for Salt Lake County Council District 2. I hadn't even thought about it. I had thought, well, maybe I'll run for the legislature again. I still had signs, but I was focusing on that referendum, and I assumed that it would take this entire year because I assumed that it would be on the fall. But that is something that I was focused on. When we got the signatures, turned it in, and the legislature was basically repealing it, I was contacted by my legislator, who really didn't want me to run against him again for the third time, and he basically said, have you considered Salt Lake County Council District 2? And I thought, no, I haven't. I thought, well, he's got a vested interest in me going that direction, but I thought I would look at it. So I talked to Amy Winter Newton, I talked to Richard Snuggrove. Those were two people on the county council that I knew. They encouraged me to run. That's not necessarily an endorsement because we've got good candidates, but they encouraged me to run. And I talked to my boss a year ago, November. I started working for an architect that's also a contractor. And so in addition to being self-employed, all of a sudden I had a full-time job. That would make it very difficult for a legislative session. And so I looked at that and I thought I could do the Salt Lake County Council District 2. I attended that public meeting in Harriman, and that's when I realized that we needed somebody on the county council that would perhaps listen better, because I found out then that it was likely to pass, even with all the opposition that I saw, and that the individual representing that particular area was going to vote for it, and that just amazed me. So I got in this race before everything really broke loose, as much as it has on the virus. Too much talking. I just got a comment from somebody. Let's see if I can find it. Reply to comment. There's a huge problem with Utah's tax system. Income taxes only paying for education, sales tax paying other public services are grossly unbalanced. It doesn't fit any longer the needs of the state. We need to consider other routes and measures, such as fewer restrictions and fewer earmarks on the use of income taxes. This is actually another candidate replying to my comment, because I asked her about what she felt about the tax bill that I fought so hard against. I'm certainly not going to be endorsing anybody that supported it. But other questions: United Police and Fire. What do I think about that? Can they be done away? That is a great question. I was not a fan of that decision. We had a county sheriff's office that was available, but with the fire and I just saw lots of problems. Even working with it just as an architect, I saw problems with county fire and some other issues, and the unified. The problem is we have had buildings done, and we've got taxes set up, and we have various jurisdictions that are planning on that. So we may or may not be able to take that away at this point. In fact, we shouldn't pull the rug out from underneath any community. But if a community feels like they can make it work without the county, that should actually be encouraged. Sorry. And some of the jurisdictions have made that decision. The county should do what they can to make that split as fair as possible for everybody. But the county shouldn't be doing everything around the county. The $1.4 billion budget is way too big. We need to look at ways to minimize the amount of spending that we have. What other questions did I see? Let's see. What are you going to do to keep an ear open? I think I covered that. Town hall meetings is critical. Let me say something else about emails. I was in the legislature for 4 different years. Most legislatures turned over their email to their intern. That doesn't mean they didn't read through those emails, but they made sure that their intern was helping to make sure them keep track of things and to respond. I did not do that. I had interns helping me in a number of various ways, but I replied to my own emails that I received as a legislator, that I had a specific email address assigned to me for that position, and I read through them. In some cases, I received hundreds of emails on particular issues, and any of the ones that I could possibly respond to, I did personally. I did that for a couple of reasons. I wanted to get the feedback. I wanted to know what people were thinking. In most cases, people come up with better ideas than I ever had of solving problems. And so listening is essential. If you're going to be an elected official, listening is huge. So I responded to my own emails. I read through them as much as possible. This is a bigger district. I don't know if I can do that, but I will read through every one that I get and go through that. Another thing that I did each year, and you can read some of my surveys if you go to my website, Fred Cox, the number 4, Utah.com. I've got a list of a couple of physical surveys that I mailed out to every uh, voter. Anybody that voted in that election, I sent an email out. I did that in, I believe, 2012, 15, 16. I think in 2011, I used the party and it only went out to, well, I still sent it out to Republicans, Democrats. So, but I would get those back. And yeah, in that case, I had an intern go through those and compile those. But I went through those statistics and I looked through as many of those as possible. But that information was critical in me making decisions. I made decisions based on what the U.S. Constitution said, what the state Constitution said, based on basic principles of government can't do everything and shouldn't do everything, and trying to reduce taxes as much as possible, or at least reduce spending so that we didn't have to um, increase taxes. And so, based on that, uh, that's how I made decisions. And I also made decisions based on the feedback that I received from those surveys, from those emails, from the phone calls, etc. I released my landline home number that I've had for 30 years. I've done that today, and yeah, some people say, oh, I can't text you. Well, some people give out cell phones and then that's a burner phone and then they get rid of it. I plan on keeping this phone number for many years. Trying to get a better voicemail system that I've inherited. I liked what I had a Google system that was working, and my current phone company, it's not working with that. I need to fix that. So if you've left a message or tried to and I've missed it, keep trying. Send me an email. I will get back with you. Um, Other questions that I've got, additional comment. Um, let's see. This person, I started this year, 2020, by signing the tax referendum petition on. So this particular person that was responding to me explained what they believe on tax deal, but they signed the referendum. That's something that I'm looking for. I'm a state delegate, and so I will certainly be looking for that. And if we have individuals running that maybe they didn't like the referendum process, that's one thing. But if they were in favor of that bill, they did not listen to the people. And if they voted for it and didn't learn their lesson and still think that that was the right thing to do, I'm not voting for them. My representative, my state representative, my state senator knew how I stood, and they voted against that bill. That's something I look at. I look at voting. You can look at my voting record. Also on my website, if you go to my blog, 2011 March, 2012 March, 2015 March, 2016 March, I have a link to a PDF that shows every vote that I made. That is not required. You can have access to that through the state's legislative research, a piece at a time, but I was one of the few legislators that released all public votes there. So hopefully I'm open and transparent. You will not agree with me on everything, uh, but tell me what you think, why you think, if I can create a win-win scenario like I tried to do with that Olympia Hills project, I will. Um, and I'm not afraid to listen to Republicans, Democrats, anybody. And people from all walks have great ideas. Um, let's see. Democrat leader is the biggest threat. I'm not sure if that's on the federal or state basis. I have noticed on the on Utah, in the Utah legislature, in many cases, 80% of the bills passed if they got out of committee. And in most cases, there wasn't a big, huge divide where the Democrats all voted for something or voted against it, and vice versa. Um, when I would see that, I'd look on the board and I'd go, "Am I missing something? That all of these Democrats are voting against something?" Sometimes it was on a specific policy issue, a general idea of what the role of government should be, and then I'd go, "Okay, I understand why the Democrats are voting for this or against it," but I have a good friend, Representative Brian King. He's the um, minority leader in our state house, and I consider him a friend. In fact, I contacted him about the referendum. He was busy that day that I needed somebody to sign the sponsor forms, and but I certainly called him. I'm not afraid to work with Republicans, Democrats, but you are right. I took a lot of heat recently when I made a comment, a post that I believed that we should not be checking people as they come into Utah. I joked about papers. Hunt for Red October, there's a discussion about this guy from Russia going to Montana, and he would be able to go from Montana to Arizona without any papers. We are Americans. We're members of the United States of America, and so I disagree with that, and I believe there's constitutional problems with that decision. I believe that there are constitutional problems with some of the decisions our county mayor has made, not only on the virus, but on guns at gun shows and some of the other things that I didn't believe that they had the constitutional authority to do that. I will fight for that. If I believe that there's a constitutional problem with something that somebody's doing, I will see if I can come up with a way of doing it constitutionally, in other words, solving it constitutionally if there's a problem that needs to be solved. But if it's going to violate our Constitution, I'm not going to cave. And you can see that I've been willing to fight, in some cases, my own party on certain issues. But I certainly disagree. Medicare, Medicaid, whatever, for all. I have seen what it does and what it is doing when the government gets too involved in our healthcare. And you can create a nightmare for people being able to get service, for people being able to be helped. And I believe that government shouldn't take over our lives. That statement still applies even after about 10 years of me making it. Let's see. Look at the time. Let's see. Got a couple of other questions. Let me go back. Ones that have been sent, email, county delegates. Sorry, this takes a couple minutes to just check those. The 5 that I had gotten earlier, as far as issues, as far as signatures to get on the ballot, support local cities. I started going that direction and I got sidetracked. Sorry. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. I attended Copperton Metro Township Council meeting. I did that for a couple of reasons. I wanted to see what their concerns were. I think that somebody representing this area, and I did that for Kearns as well. I was going to be doing that for Magna. I was going to be doing that on several different jurisdictions so that I could figure out what the various councils were worried about and make myself available as a candidate. I would continue to do that if I take office. Let's let's see, I have got a comment made. Let's see if I can figure out anything else. That was not a question. But that's important. The public town hall meetings are important. Getting feedback from every jurisdiction. So I need to know what Herman thinks, and I need to know what West Valley thinks. I know the people on West Valley City Council. I have attended some of their meetings. I've even had issues on there. They're going to be talking about a problem that I am working on the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to be paying attention to that. But that's important. We have local cities that have councils. In many cases, they have mayors. Most cases, they do. Sometimes the mayor is the chair of the council, or sometimes maybe full time. I know many of them. I'm learning to meet more of them. I want to know what their concerns are and see what the county can do to make things better. The more that we can fix it so that the local city is making the decision as much as possible, the better. I have seen the county, in my case, I believe that the county has overstepped its bounds in some cases as far as what a city should or shouldn't do. Kearns, it was Kearns, just recently did a 6-month moratorium on building construction. I was in that meeting as an architect. I thought this is bad. I've done projects in that district metro area, and I thought, if they changed one word, it would solve the concerns that they had. They inherited some problems from the county, and they were trying to fix it, and they figured that they could put that on hold for 6 months. But I knew darn well that I'm going to get a call from somebody that wanting to remodel their space or whatever, and I thought, just change this word. They didn't at the advice of their attorney, but I was there and I listened to why they wanted to do it, and I think we need to have that more each time. That's very important. Let's see if there's any other questions that I'm seeing. I'm not. If you wanted to ask a question and you're watching this later, send me an email, fred@fredcox, the number 4, Utah, spelled all the way out, .com. I get quite a few emails on that one, but I still go through that and try to respond to each one. I've sent out emails. Again, if you happen to be a county Republican delegate and have not received emails from the county party inviting you to try out their software over this weekend, or on how to vote next weekend, if you haven't got that, contact the county party. Go to their website. It's SLco2.com, I believe, and follow the links to learn about what they're doing and how to participate. Every vote counts. The last 2 times I have run, I needed 3 more votes to get out of convention. When I won initially, I won by 1 vote in the second round. I was behind in the first round. It is very possible, with the way where people live and who's running, that with the 3 candidates we have, that it could be decided in the second round, and I may or may not be in first place the first round. I need every vote first round. If for some reason there isn't a winner, there will be like the next day or something. They're doing it the whole weekend, I think, including Sunday. Watch the second video. I think it's a little bit better than the first. I think the lighting is better and probably the sound's a little bit better, but watch that. But I need your vote, because that second round could determine whether or not I face a primary, whether I get to a primary or not, and who's going to be facing the Democrat this fall. We've got good candidates in this race. I believe all of them are a good change from what we've had. Not that our current incumbent is necessarily bad. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses. I believe that listening and having town hall meetings and listening to the individuals that he was representing was a weakness. And that doesn't mean that he didn't have somebody full-time trying to help him do that. But based on the decisions that were made recently, the vote to increase property taxes last December, all of those, I believe, decisions were made that I would not have agreed to, and I would have voted differently. I appreciate your time. I'm not seeing any additional questions. I am seeing some favorable comments, so thank you. Based on past, I will get some additional questions, probably via email, and I will respond on my blog, and you can access that from my website, fredcoxforutah.com. Again, it's not a fancy website. The videos are not fancy. I'm probably not that fancy. If you're looking for somebody with a really cool house across from the temple, I'm not that person. We have someone that fits that description, or that has some of the best flowers in the county. I hope she still can sell them. But we have some good candidates. All of them have strengths. All of them have weaknesses. So do I. Make the best choice, because Salt Lake County deserves to have somebody that will listen and somebody that's willing to fight, no matter what happened. Let's see. We've got some more. AppWorks. Kearns is in the process of creating a general plan. I think that is why the moratorium was put in place. Were there other reasons? It had to do with their. Sorry, I missed these. I didn't scroll down. I was at that meeting, and yes, that was one of the main purposes. But they inherited some zoning ordinances, zoning maps, city, and they were seeing things built. Their planning commission would approve things, and they looked at that going, this isn't what we want. And they looked, and that's what the ordinance said, so that's what the planning commission approved. So that was one of the reasons that they did that. There are major problems with Salt Lake County ordinances, and I probably have more experience dealing with those types of ordinances than anybody running, just because of the fact that I am an architect. And if you're going to have a part-time council, you need people from different backgrounds. Let's see. Democrat leader, thanks for keeping real, looking out for caring. Kearns is in process, loaded the app and it works good. Good luck. Okay, this is probably long enough. Normally I would have an hour and a half or 2 hours, because usually I get enough questions to go that long. And I just sit down up front. I don't need to be standing and looking all formal. I just sit down there and listen. But that's the information that I've got. Those are the responses to the questions that I've received so far. More questions, let me know. If you know a Salt Lake County Republican delegate, encourage them to support me. If you are, I ask for your vote next weekend. You will be making a determination, and I believe that this is still, even with the virus and everything else, this is a better process. It gives people a chance to compete that aren't famous, that aren't rich, that aren't incumbents, and I will take this process, even with this challenge, over just about anything that I know of, and look forward to a primary, if there is one, and the general election this fall. Thank you.